My guest again today is Rachel Mathews. Back again, last time I think was June of 24. And Rachel, what's new?
Oh, quite a lot. I've retired from Council Watch and I've written a book about it.
Did they slow down your ability to speak there?
When the elections came around, they decided to change the Have Your Say rules, which is the opportunity that the public come in to speak to them. And they made it that only one person from a group could speak, and you weren't allowed to raise the same subject more than once every 6 months. What else? There were various other rules, but oh yes, you had to send in your question ahead of time. And then, so of course we played with that. We'd send them the most innocuous question imaginable, so they couldn't possibly turn it down. And then there'd be a whole speech around it that fired everything we wanted to say. So we played with that a bit, to the point they now say you have to send the entire speech in before you can come in. But to their credit, they haven't actually stopped us saying anything. And we have sent some quite in-your-face speeches calling them to account, especially the ones that Karina does. So, yeah, they've tried everything they could to slow us down. And then just at the point I thought I could step away from it because you just weren't getting anywhere, the scrutiny chairman called me up to say that he would scrutinise the climate emergency. Now, I can't remember if we discussed it last time, but basically he made this promise before the elections, that if he was re-elected, he would scrutinise the climate emergency for us. So everybody on the comments just said, oh, he's a typical politician, full of hot air. But I felt he meant it. And sure enough, he did. And he proved it by end of October saying, can you phone me? And then he said, we've got the opportunity to actually do this in the scrutiny panel. Can you bring 4 speakers in with you so it gets the proper airtime? Because that was another change in rules. They limited it to 8 people coming in. So he said, I've taken the liberty of reserving you 4 spots. Can you do it? I said, yeah, sure. Thinking, oh, I've only got 2 lined up, and that was Ralph Ellis and Paul Burgess. So then it was a matter of filling the other 2 spots. And fortunately, I joined Climate Curious, David Siegel's wonderful climate course. And the week before, we'd had a session with Greg Wrightstone from the CO2 Coalition. And he was really lovely and very approachable. And he said how much he loves giving talks. And I thought, OK, we'll test that. And so I got his email address and emailed him, would you be willing to speak to Colchester Council? And he said, yeah, sure. Do you want me to find anyone else? I said, oh, yes, please. We need one more person. And the person I would love most in the world would be, of course, Dr. William Happer. And I was like, I really hope he asks him. And sure enough, he did. And to my great surprise, I got an email from Dr. Happer saying, yes, I'd be delighted to speak at the council. So I couldn't believe my luck. I thought even Colchester Council cannot turn down or question someone with Dr. William Happer's level of expertise.
What?
But, of course, the rules were, what unbeknownst to us, at the time they'd had that change of rules, they also changed it that you couldn't do Have Your Say via Zoom. So I'd got all this list of speakers, and it's like, because, Paul Burgess is Wales, so that's a hell of a journey. It's about 8-hour trip, probably, from get to Colchester. Ralph is Devon way, I think. So again, probably a 6-hour journey to get here. So it was like, come on, you've declared a climate emergency, yet you want our experts to travel in and tour in Florida, California, all that sort of neck of the woods. What are you thinking? Like, surely. But it was like, no, they're the rules. And it's like, do you know who these people are? No, they're the rules. Real Jobsworth kind of, no, rules. Computer says no. So then I had the idea of, okay, I know they allow expert speakers in via Zoom. Can you bring them in as an expert speaker? And the chairman said, yes, all right, I'll ask everyone. And it took days of going backwards and forwards, and the council eventually agreed, but only if they could get everyone on that committee to agree to the outside expert. And of course, it was so close to the actual day, they couldn't get hold of everybody. So guess who had to go in and do another talk?
I think it was you, huh? In person.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Is
I
that?
was not happy.
I have not seen it. Is that on your Council Watch? On your
Yes,
YouTube?
it is.
Yeah, I'll have to take a look at that. So do you think it's just they're making all these rules just directly to stop you guys from testifying, or were there a lot of other people trying to testify and that's why they made these rules? Or is it all kind of about you?
I think it was other groups as well because they saw what we were doing. We've got an area called the Middlewick Ranges, which is a rare acidic grassland, and we've got endangered bird species on it, and one bird was even thought to be extinct. And they want to build several thousand homes there. So the Middlewick group saw what we were doing, and they would bring in a whole load of speakers on one subject. So people started copying us, so they could probably just about cope with us. But when everyone else started to do it, as soon as there was issues, because they limit you to 3 minutes. So what we used to do is we'd have our say, but we'd stretch it over several people so that we got to say everything we wanted. To be fair, it was taking up the meetings would be a whole hour of people having their say and sometimes longer. So I can see why they did it. But then if they were doing things the public wanted and not what the public don't want, they probably wouldn't have so many people coming in to have their say.
So the last time you're on here, you were talking about when you were having your say, maybe half the counselors were just scrolling on their phones and trying not to listen. Is that still the case? Do they have the same set of counselors still not listening, or what's going on?
They've improved a little bit because they've been on camera and we've highlighted it. But yeah, it's falling on deaf ears, which was the other reason I wanted to stop. It's one thing going in when you think you've got an opportunity to reach people, but when you can see you can't, we've reached everyone that we could reach. The rest of them are so brainwashed into their way of thinking that it doesn't matter how many times you present the evidence that EVs are not environmentally friendly, and they just still they like, oh yeah, and then you hear them in another meeting and they're talking about getting more EVs, and you think, what? It's just not going in, is it?
So I've been reading just now, refreshing my memory about some comments that people have had after watching you up there talking. And constantly people are saying stuff along the lines of, you're firm but soft-spoken, you never lose your cool, and it's such a brilliant approach. It's such a so effective what you're doing in that way. And you said yourself it may be kind of hard to not lose your cool sometimes, but you always deliver it in that same way. Do you think other people are doing that? They're taking your advice and doing this at other councils? Are you seeing evidence of that?
Yes, there's council watch groups started up and down the country, and the type of people it seems to attract mostly are people that will go in very calmly and will go in continually, because it's not a one and done scenario like I thought it was going to be. You have to just be very persistent, and that takes, so if someone's a bit of a hothead, they're not attracted to doing it. So thankfully we have attracted those types of people. And yes, the speeches up and down the country, and actually in other countries we've had people contact us from New Zealand, Canada, Germany. They're taking the idea, and we've got speeches in a Dropbox folder, so they've got the basis and then they can adapt them as they see fit. So yeah, a part of it was we had advice from a behavioural psychologist, David Charalambous, and he said that if you go in a non-confrontational way, you can't just go in with facts and figures, but if you try and reach people in a way that they can understand, i.e. you say something to bridge the gap between where they are and where you want to take them. So you almost like take them by the hand and say, come this way. So you say something that they already believe to be true, and then you put in a few little bit. If you immediately go in and say everything you think about climate's wrong, and you have to build your case gradually. So it does take patience. But that's another reason why I've stopped, because we had just such a palaver over 5G. I don't know if you saw some of those videos, but Karina went in, she gave them the evidence. They were accepting certificates from using the names of companies which had been dissolved. So you would think this would be fairly straightforward. They go, oh, whoops, yeah, we'll make sure that doesn't happen again. No, this took 10 months of battling and a year to get them to finally admit they had accepted these fraudulent certificates. And it was getting so ridiculous that my videos were getting more and more sarcastic, because it's like, come on, we can see these on your planning portal. And you're telling us they're all fine and they're not. It was just getting so silly. And once you've lost respect, you can't have a relationship. And I know I've lost respect for that council. So I don't trust myself to keep going in because I just know something will come out of my mouth that I will regret later. I do think there does need to be a way of doing things, but I know that I'm going to be letting rip if I'm not careful. Karina, on the other hand, is still going back in and she is letting rip. She doesn't care anymore. But it's a shame it's got like that because, of course, you're not going to reach people when you have a go at them. But we started out with the best of intentions, but it is slipping a little now.
I think it's so interesting as I listen to what you're saying and read your book and all this, that you've gone so far down so many rabbit holes. You know so much about what's actually going on, but you don't lead with talking about the WEF and digital control of our lives. You don't necessarily lead with that. And you were saying that it really helps to be limited to 3 minutes because ahead of time you just sharpen your arguments and you put forth your best 3 minutes, and that's how things end up going viral. I think that is a model for the rest of us to follow too, I think.
Yes, I was cursing on that first EV speech. Mine was 15 minutes long. There were so many things I wanted to say. But thankfully for my business, I have done some copywriting courses where they teach you to be concise. I'm not good at it. It takes me a long time to be really concise, but I was able to get that speech down. I mean, a classic example of wonderful copywriting is, if you tried to describe an iPod, I think most of us would be waffling on about, oh yeah, you can fit your entire music library on it and it da-da-da. Whereas their advertising was 10,000 songs in your pocket. Boom. That's called copywriting. So that's always in my mind when I'm doing these speeches. How many things can I layer into a single sentence? What can I do to really get that in? Now, I guess these days, you could get AI to do it for you, but I like the brain exercise of doing it myself. So that's what made the speeches, their 3-minute time limit was really helpful. And then you put the images on top. And of course, you've got the graphics showing what you're saying, backing up what you're saying. And that's what helped the videos go viral.
So right now, these days, do you personally have time to work on this, or you have to work on your real job a lot of the hours per week, or how's that going?
Yeah, I mean, I was doing between 30 and 50 hours a week with Council Watch because there's not just the going in and writing the speeches, but there's all the emails backwards and forwards. The videos take forever because they're very tightly edited. You've got to get a 4-hour meeting down into about 15 minutes. That takes some doing. So yes, my business suffered as a result because I was out of it for 2 years. Once I get my mind focused on something, I can't quite let it go. So now I'm like, yes, I do need to go back to work now, although I've taken time out to write the book, but now that's more or less done, although it's ended up being a trilogy, not the sequel I was hoping it was going to be. So there's still more to do, but yeah, by the summer, I can really concentrate on my own business again.
Do you still get people accusing you of being showered with money by big oil, and that's why you're saying all this stuff? Is that a thing, or people don't say that?
No, I think people realize, I mean, I get the odd thing, the odd person has said, oh, you're sponsored by big oil. And it's like, well, okay, could you show me where in my bank account, please? Because I'd love to be, frankly.
Even I seem to be hearing that a little less. I don't know. I think in general, there's this whole waking up thing, the vibe shift that Peter Ridd talks about. Have you seen much of the whole vibe shift in the last year yourself? Are you seeing what I'm seeing, that people are more receptive to what you're saying now than a year or two ago?
Where you are, yes. In the UK, well, with the average person, yes, definitely. Obviously, the state of the UK government at the moment. They're just all insane and pushing along with net zero as much as physically possible. But yeah, it's difficult. People, I suppose it's hitting people in the pocket. So they are more open now to hearing another side of the argument.
But do you think still that the people, the voters in your local area they're still getting their news from the mainstream, and to them, they don't know about EV fires and they think, oh, the weather's getting way worse? Just the average person, that's still what they're hearing? They're not hearing much of this other message still.
It's difficult because I don't tend to have much, because my business is very much online. The people that I see, I don't get out in the general public too much, but whenever I'm at my parents' and I watch the television with them, because I don't have a TV at home, I refuse to watch it, but at their house, it's on all the time. And, even something like Gardener's World, they're bringing in about climate change, and there's not a single program They were even watching some French thing with subtitles the other day, and even they were bringing in about climate alarmism. And you think, oh, for goodness sake, you cannot escape it on the mainstream. So I don't know how many average people have escaped it.
Okay. Last time we talked, there was going to be a climate debate that might have been scheduled for September of last year. Did that happen, or what was the update on that?
No, they wouldn't. They didn't have a room that they could give us because the Moot Hall, which is their main meeting room, the ceiling's dangerous and it's going to cost millions to repair. I think if that room had been available, we would have got it. But no, that hasn't gone ahead now. And to be honest, it wouldn't have made any difference because it doesn't matter how much information you give them. They are just programmed on this route of there is a problem. I think the general public wake up much quicker than councillors do because they're getting it from the council officers the whole time. Their political parties, they're all being steered that there is a climate emergency.
I was just re-listening to what you said, and you said something about how maybe you couldn't have the debate because the ceiling was falling in on the room. And I thought that was just kind of symbolic that that's the reason that they couldn't have it. So, so yeah, no plans to have that. Maybe it just won't happen, do you think?
I don't think it'll happen. The council leader, while he said he was open to it, I'm not sure that he really was. And it would be very dangerous for them to do it. And also their stipulation was that we had to have somebody that would argue for a man-made climate emergency, and we couldn't get anyone. I even contacted the Green Party and said, can you provide someone? And I got a ridiculous answer. I think Paul Burgess told you when he was on that it would have to be representative. So they'd need 16 people. And I said, and only 2 saying against it. I said, well, you can bring as many people as you like. I don't care, just bring them. But you'd all have to have the time split equally. They seem to think consensus, and they don't want to debate something that's already a known fact. So that there's no point in even discussing it, was their attitude.
I mean, don't you think, though, that deep down they must have a lot of lack of confidence in their own arguments if they need like a 16-to-1 advantage or something to do a debate? Doesn't that indicate that they're not very, they don't realize, they don't think it's a slam dunk anymore, maybe? Or do they?
I don't know. The ones in the Green Party councillors are so indoctrinated. I don't even think they even give it that level of thought. It's just for them, it is what it is, and there's no point in discussing it. And he also said in the email that there's because at the time there was some rioting in England, and he was saying, well, we can't have misinformation because with everyone rioting, a drop at a hat. Whereas I was saying, well, don't you think not being able to afford food and to heat their home is going to cause some riots? So surely if it's something as important as saving the planet, somebody would be willing just to prove people that all these draconian measures are necessary. And he never replied to that. No, at the end of it, I said, if you cannot provide anyone, it does rather prove that this is pure propaganda. And then that was the last I heard of it.
Okay, let's switch gears and talk about your books, because I listened to the first one.
What I tried to do, to begin with, I wrote it as a sequel to Misadventures of a Digital Nomad. But it's such a leap with who I was then, with what happened in 2020, because I was stuck in Spain and Italy for those lockdowns, and it was a very different to what they had in the UK. In the UK, it was quite a soft lockdown. In Spain, you weren't even allowed out to exercise for nearly 3 months, and there was armed police on the streets, and they were searching your shopping, and they were especially looking for people who'd been in the country too long, of which I was one. So I had to keep a very low profile. I was basically under house arrest. And I started to write it as a sequel. So I put in some of the travel adventures prior to 2020. And then you get me suddenly going, oh my goodness, look at the state of the world, and then going to Council Watch. There was such a big disconnect between me telling stories of getting lost in the Sequoia National Park when it in the snow and ending up having to go off-piste to escape some black bears on my backside. I'm skidding down this mountain. It just wasn't a good fit with me then. Oh, I'm going into the council to talk about EVs. It was just ridiculous. I thought, no, they were my favourite chapters as well. So I cut out 4 or 5 chapters, and they're going to have to go in book 2. And book 2, I'm going to have to somehow find a way of warning people that, yeah, book 3, I get quite an awakening, a bit of a change of character. So you may not like book 3, but yeah, those stories now they're written, it's like they're so funny, they need to be in a book, just not this one.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I will like book 3. I've really enjoyed the stuff I've heard so far. And to me, it's so interesting that you're talking about your life and you're just talking about all this crazy stuff that's happened, delivered in your voice. To me, it sounds like you're a character from Downton Abbey or something as an American. The way you deliver it, it's so funny and interesting the way you deliver it. I think it's wonderful. And your whole life story, would you call yourself maybe a normie for a while, that you were not interested in politics or any of this other stuff? And then you would say that COVID, the craziness of COVID woke you up. And
Oh, yeah.
yeah, and you're talking specifically about how crazy it got in places in Europe that you could walk your dog, but only 100 meters. Is that true?
Yep.
And
Yeah, or €600 fine.
and they didn't want you walking by yourself on the beach, so maybe you had to sneak through a fence or something. And they didn't want you sitting in your balcony by yourself outdoors on your own
The
balcony.
balcony was fine. They didn't want you. You couldn't walk on the beach. You couldn't go out. You couldn't leave your house. Basically, you could do whatever you liked in your house, but you couldn't. But now I was lucky. I had a balcony, but the weather was dreadful. It was very out of character, so it was drizzly. But even so, you just want to stretch your legs and go for a walk. So the community. I was living in a gated community, so I could walk around, because the police couldn't get in because it was locked gate. So it was a but you just don't want to be walking around because there was no trees. It was just white houses. So I just I want to be out in nature. So I thought I'd go for a walk along the beach. But the trouble is the police were doing patrols every 15 minutes. So you'd have to time it between them going, and then I'd have to run up to this area to hide. But one day I didn't leave it quite long enough. I thought they'd gone, but they hadn't. So it became a bit of a farce, me escaping them.
Yeah, you just barely escaped the police, and what you're trying to do is walk on the beach by yourself. It's unreal.
I mean, and I was sitting there once I did escape them. It's like, never did I think I'd be the type of person to be on the run from the police. I mean, what the hell is happening?
So maybe I got it wrong, but were there ever restrictions on you couldn't even hang out in your own yard? I thought you were saying that it's lucky you had walls so people couldn't see you, or maybe I just had that wrong. You could walk around by your house.
You were fine in your own garden. You just couldn't leave your direct property.
Okay. And did you see those rules? Were they fluctuating back and forth? Did they change a lot, and you had to keep track of? And it's a €600 fine if you got the rule wrong. And they actually did that, right? It wasn't just
they made millions. They made absolute millions. And the targets were people like me that were clearly foreigners, but they were checking your passports to see how long you'd been in the country. And now I'd sent my passport back to the UK to be renewed, so I didn't have any formal ID. So if they caught me, it would probably have been a €2,000 fine.
So how did that go over with the other people? Were you alone in saying this is absolutely crazy, or did people kind of submit to it? And would they submit to it again if the next time this comes up?
It was quite shocking, because one of the charms of Spain is that the people, they got quite a wild, we'll do what we like spirit. But to see them all shut down like that, they complied. And what was worse is, if they saw you if any of the neighbours saw you doing anything you shouldn't do, they would phone the police. Wow. So it was like, I can't believe this carefree, happy-go-lucky nation. And suddenly, it was very shocking to experience the level of control, and that people really went along with it. There was no pushback. I think there would be a pushback now. At least I hope there would be. But at the time, no, everyone complied. That was what was so shocking.
Do you have a sense that life is totally back to normal there? Are there still some people wearing a mask outside and worried about this still 5 years in?
I think you see the occasional person with a mask, but it's very rare now. What was your favourite bit of the book, or what surprised you the most?
I'm just fascinated by hearing your whole backstory of all your traveling around, and just the massive change between who you were 6 years ago versus now. I think it's great. And, we talked about you don't consider yourself a hero. You're an ordinary person who's done great things. But I really do think that you are a hero. I really enjoyed the fact that you don't have any real love for public speaking at all, it sounds like. But you forced yourself to do it. And you use some techniques to help yourself calm down, I think, that could help the rest of us. Can you remember or can you tell us the name? was it EFT or?
Yeah, EFT,
Yeah,
emotional freedom technique, sometimes known as tapping. Apparently, there's a better version. The original version was TFT, but that's more complicated to learn. And
yeah,
basically, you're tapping on meridian points. And any traumas that you've had in life, they usually come, it will give you a fear for the future. So what you do is you think back to that original time. Say if you've got a fear of flying, for example.
yeah.
If there was an incident where a plane, it suddenly dropped out the sky before they were able to rectify it in some bad turbulence, every time you get on a plane, you might be quite tense. So you would think back to that first incident and then you would just tap through all the points. And there's a bit more to it. You'd need to watch a proper EFT video. This is just the highlights. And then bit by bit, that trauma is probably stored in only one or two of those meridians. And just by doing some simple tapping, it just releases it. I don't know the mechanics exactly how it works, but it takes away the traumatic reaction that you had to that event. And then you'll remember that event, but you won't be going, oh. And it can do that on many different fears, traumas, negative emotions, whatever you like. And once that has cleared, then you're able to do what you need to do. I mean, I still don't like public speaking, but I'll do it. And I'm not as stressed as I was the first time I had to do it. So, you know, it doesn't completely change your personality. It changes your ability to cope with what is happening. So that was a very valuable tool to get me through the worst of it. And, you know, was never the type of person that likes to make a fuss. I would never have been the type of person that would gone into a council and complain about anything. So for me, that was a huge change, but it was too important not to. You see all these EV fires, they're bad enough, but when you know how destructive to the planet the mining is, and, you know, polluting the water supply for 300 years, I mean, come on. And for Indigenous people, they've been moved off the best of the land, so they're already not on the best land, and now they've managed to make do on that, and even that's being taken away from them. So, you know, I don't know if you've had it in the States, but in England we had a whole time of people rioting, and they were pushing over statues of people that had made money through slavery and things. And so, you know, the very, like, you know, that's not an acceptable part of our history, let's push that into a river or something. And you think, well, hang on, you're all for EVs, yet here we go again. And solar panels, all the slavery in that, although some people dispute the slavery aspects to solar panels, so I'm really not sure anymore, but I'm told there is forced labour in a lot of these factories for the mining. So there's so many bad things about it, and, you know, people just don't need to know that it's not as good as build. So that is important, and that's something I was very passionate about, that it made me get over the fact that, oh, I'm not someone that does public speaking.
So I'm interested, what do you think the next 5 years might hold for you? You had no idea what this previous 5 would be. Have you thought about what's happening next for you?
I honestly hate to think. This was a big enough shock. I'm certainly going to take a bit of time out because, you know, it's been a 5-year tour of duty, because before I was doing the Council Watch stuff, a group of us got together when COVID was at its worst, and we were making informational videos and infographics and trying to get the information out there. So I do feel a bit worn out from constantly trying to educate people. And, you know, my parents aren't getting any younger. My father's got back surgery coming up, and he's going to need a lot of care after that. So once this book is finished, I'm going to take some well-earned time out, and then we'll see what happens after all that's out the way. But yes, I've now got another book to write in the summer to link the 3 books together. But that will be pleasurable, because that was a very exciting time in my life, whereas I've written about the 2 that weren't quite so easy. So this middle book at least will be more enjoyable for me.
Do you think you might get in a camper van and just start driving around either the US or Europe again? Is that a thing that could happen?
Well, I've got the dog now, so it all depends how my parents do. I mean, I do enjoy it. I've still got a tent. That was the compromise. So we do go off camping from time to time, although it's not quite as nice as a camper van. But yeah, she loves road trips. So yeah, I'm sure there'll be more at some point.
Was that the dog I saw peeking in the window behind you here? Yeah, that's a famous dog to me. Yeah, I know a lot about that dog. Okay.
Yes.
I'm curious, have you practiced your public speaking at all, just in front of a mirror or anything? Because I just read that, actually, I'm working on this myself, that using a lot of dictation, I sit in front of my computer now and I just dictate stuff into a notes file instead of I used to type it in. And I'm hearing that makes you more concise, it's good practice to actually verbalize stuff. Because in most of my days, I don't hardly say a word. I'm just typing stuff in and I'm reading stuff and I don't actually use my voice. Do you practice public speaking?
I haven't done, no, but then with the number of videos I've had to make for Council Watch, I was about 90 of them in the end, and all the ones I've done for my garden design channel, then that sort of gave me that practice from that perspective. It's difficult. I'm so new to it because I've only done 2 free form without a script. So the biggest trouble I have is the timing, because with the council speeches, 450 words, that's going to take you 3 minutes. But when someone says, can you speak for 15 minutes or 40 minutes at UK Column, it's like, I don't know how you do the timing for me. So I tend to come up with a lot of things. I tend to play it in my head more than anything than actually saying it out loud. Because as I say, because of the amount of videos I've made, I know it will be fine if I can get it out my mouth. I've just got to make sense of it in my head. It's quite tricky. So I tend to do like the advice I was given from Janie Lee Grace, who does a lot of radio work. She said, make sure you know what you're going to say at the beginning and know what you're going to say at the end. And then it helps if you have a beginning, middle and end. And I think I always have written down who, what, why, when, so that I get through the story in a good order. But then I end up having like a lot of little sketches in my head. They just seem to beam down. And then it's like, okay, well, I'll put that. So I have like little stories. And then on the day, I kind of wing it a bit and work out which story I'm going to do and then find a way of joining them in. So it's a bit haphazard at the moment. I would like to get better at it.
I've done a bunch of reading from Dale Carnegie from back in the day about public speaking. And he kind of stressed that the important thing is if you really know what you're talking about, and if you are very interested in your own subject, that's kind of it, those 2 things. And people don't actually care that much about your delivery if you meet those two requirements. So you definitely meet those 2. Yes, I
think that's a good tip. I think that's a good tip. And one I heard from Brian Tracy, Mum gave me a CD before I did the Bristol one. And he said, give people a reason to listen to you, the what's in it for me. So that's why I put in the UK Column speech that why is it us? I think there's a reason that not everybody is tuned into what's going on. So why is it us? And what should we do about it? So I made the speech, it's all going to be about you. And then everyone's like, oh yes, why is it us? So giving people that reason. And the same, actually, we should have done that more in our council speeches. We were so busy concentrating on trying to get that bridge across. The most listened to speech was one Karina did when her opening lines were, I've got a proposal for you that's going to save you 2 days of online training tedium. Because the day before, we'd witnessed a meeting where the councillors were complaining how much they hated doing the online training courses. So we thought, all those mobile phones went down the moment she said that. They were all ears, and it's like, how? What? And then we told them about just how rubbish the carbon literacy, or we've nicknamed it carbon illiteracy training is, that they're going to have to go through, and how manipulative it is. So, yeah, if you can give people a good reason to listen, and then you've got you're passionate about your subject, then yes, I think that helps a great deal.
I think it's so important that you planned ahead of time. When you were delivering this stuff, you were doing a screen record on your computer, so you captured good audio right there, right? I don't know if you had a good way to capture the counselors as they talked. It's hard to get the audio from them, but it was critical, wasn't it, to capture good video and audio as good as you could, so that thousands or millions of other people could watch online later, right?
Yes, although the angle I had the camera to read, or the computer to read what I was reading, I managed to cut off most of my head. Oh. But anyway, minor detail. But I thought, well, it's not such a bad thing, because if it goes viral, no one will know what I look like. But yeah, it's the council, they've got cameras set up because they do it via Zoom. So we can get that off of their YouTube channel. But the audio always cracks up on that. So that's why I was taking my computer, so that I had a crystal clear audio for at least what I said.
Yeah, I mean, there you go. That the video wasn't perfect. You didn't need any special effects or fantastic video, because the audio was so good, or just the power of what you were saying was so good. That's why it really went viral, correct?
Yeah, I think so. And also, it's unusual for people to be going in talking to their council. I mean, probably thousands of people have been doing it for years, but to see it recorded, most people don't even think to do that or will see what it's like. So well, it's it's a weird reality TV, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you've got the general public going in talking, straight talking, common sense that you think, okay, that's irrefutable. And then you watch it come back. The councillors have put it in their weird word salad soup, and you get these odd responses that you just think, what? And it's that mixture of complete nonsense versus straight talking common sense, and then trying to wrangle around the rubbish that comes back at you. So it's actually quite compulsive viewing.
Yeah, it's just so much better than you going to the meeting, no recording, and just telling us what happened. It's so much more
You
effective.
have to see it to believe it, don't you?
You do.
The stuff that comes back at you.
And, they still have not made the rule, though, no recording here. You'd think that's one of the first things they would do. They're still allowing that, huh?
They're allowing it. Funnily enough, the scrutiny chairman said that he was the one a year before got them to put it into their constitution that people could film, because they had the security drag someone out who tried to film it. And so that is only the year before we came in was that rule allowed. So of course it's in their constitution, so they can't change it now. Well, they could, but they're going to look really bad if they do.
Okay. Is that just everybody has their own constitution, or do you think councils around the UK, most of them would allow recording?
They all have different constitutions, and some allow recording, some don't. I would imagine now with Council Watch doing what it does, that a lot of them are wishing they hadn't got that in there. I was writing for sort of 10 hours a day. It just came down, in part because I'm just remembering what happened. So it's not like I've got to create a story. It's already there. It's just a matter of getting it down in a logical, sensible order. And thank goodness, when I'm traveling, I take so many photos so I could jog my memory. And of course, the videos, because you forget after a while some of the stupid things the councillors have said back to you. So I had to rewatch several videos, and it's like, really, that happened? Oh my goodness. And then one of them, I watched it when I just turned round to full council and told them how stupid their carbon literacy training was, that, that could be for pencils or diamonds. It should at least be carbon dioxide literacy. And I'm like, oh, look at you. You're on your little high horse there. I was quite surprised. I was like, oh, dear, Rachel.
So
it's been handy from that point of view. Everything's documented. Otherwise, I wouldn't have remembered half of that book.
So did you keep a journal ever? Did you have a written journal as you were going through your life the last 5 years, or mostly you used photos and videos that you had to jog your memory?
No, I mean, I did with the first book because people kept nagging me to write it while I was doing the trip. So I had an iPad mini and I was typing it with two thumbs as I went. So it was very fresh. And that's how I got so many details in the first book. But no, my mum's been saying for a few years, oh, we should write a follow-up. And I said to her, yeah, I haven't really done much. And she looked at me like, really? And now I've gone through the photos. It's like, oh, yeah, I went to Budapest. I went to South Africa. I went to Croatia. I did this. I did horse whispering in California. So book 2 is going to be full of that. And then book 3 was all of the, how do I get out of Spain? Because at the time they were saying you were going to need a vaccine to fly. And I'd done so much research. It's like, I'm not having that. So that's why I bought the camper van, so that I could drive back, because I thought they can't stop me driving back. And then it was like, oh, well, if I drive back, I could get a dog. And, all of the sticky situations I managed to get myself in, going from doing a little tour, because I decided to go to Italy, and I went on a natural house building course, because it's like, how bad is the world going to get? I really was mentally in a very dark place, but it's like, well, I've got no life skills other than designing gardens. So I set about like, okay, if I had to build my own house with my bare hands, can I do it? That box is ticked. If I went on lots of foraging courses, so if there wasn't food, can I know what to eat? And it's like, yep, tick that box. But I've found, having done goodness knows how many foraging courses in this country, at least, it's like, there's, unless it's autumn and there's berries and fruits, you're going to starve, because the number of edible leaves it's just not good. And I don't trust my mushroom recognition enough. That's the other thing I've learned doing foraging courses. So the book is a whole journey of, one, waking up to the horror of how things really are in the world, two, deciding to do something about it, but also make sure that I was better equipped to handle whatever comes, including making myself tougher so that I could handle colder weather, because I knew that heating is going to go up so much, and maybe even blackouts. It's like, okay, you need to toughen up, because at the time, 24 degrees and I would be cold. What's that in Fahrenheit?
75.2, it says here.
So yeah, I'd have the heating cranked up to that. Whereas now, my central heating is set to 16 degrees. And that's and that's just by doing cold water therapy, your Wim Hof stuff.
Wow. 60.8 Fahrenheit. Wow. That is cold. That's how you have it set all the time.
Yep.
Wow. I'm impressed. It's interesting that you mentioned foraging, because my worlds are coming together here, because I just interviewed my brother, and he has gone on 3 major trips, foraging trips, where he didn't bring any food at all. And he lived for weeks just on fishing and berries and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, he's worked on that too. Both of you have worked on that. But I think foraging in the UK, that would be a tough ask, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you can catch, a pigeon or something, and if you can got some meat, then you'll be fine. But actual just living on leaves, and I was shocked. There's like one tuber that we could dig up, and they're really difficult to dig up. So there's very few carbs. There's a few berries in the autumn and some fruits. But yeah, if you're out without food at the wrong time of year, you're not going to do well in England. That's for sure. I've done some add-ons with the book as well. So there's, because of when I came back to England, my father had had some knee surgery, and my mother wasn't very well, and the dog ended up getting injured. So I was in the local chemist nearly every day queuing. One, it was shocking at how full the chemist was. And two, in Europe, there'd been no shortages of anything, no food, no medicines. I got back to England, half the shelves were empty, and they kept running out of medicines. The number of prescriptions, I'd hear the chemist say, I can only fulfill half of that. And I just standing there day in, day out queuing, it was like, gosh, if we run out of painkillers, it was unimaginable, because my father was in so much pain. And what with the dog, I couldn't even get a certain type of bandage, cohesive bandage, the sticky ones. Okay. And they just had nothing. And that really made me think, oh, goodness. Can you imagine if they ran out of medicines? We're a tiny island here. We're very vulnerable. So it made me really research into natural alternatives. And I've got a ridiculous medicine cabinet now because of that experience. And it's put me on a journey of researching all sorts of weird and wonderful things, including one that's very popular in the States, turpentine. I always knew that as paint thinner. I had no idea it was old-fashioned medicine. So I've even got some of that, and that does incredible things. So it's put me on a whole journey. And because people are always asking me, well, what's in your medicine cabinet then? So I'm doing an add-on where I'm going to do, I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to do a full list and some videos of, this is not medical advice, but here's why I've got this and here's what it can do. And I think it would be advisable for everyone to have some backups, even if they're really into, this allopathic medicine and they don't particularly want to go natural. If you haven't got a choice, you do need some backups. So there's that. And also, I'm considering doing a speech writing course, because I know a lot of people want to go into their council. So there's a few add-ons, and I want to interview people like your good self about, rather than getting sort of hung up on what's going wrong in the world, I think our focus ought to be, what could we create that's better? And we've sort of push more towards doing that. But the last chapter of the book that I struggled with was, well, okay, if we could wave a magic wand and do anything, what should we create? How should the world be? In a perfect world, what would we do? So that we've got something to head for. So I want to interview as many people as possible and see what ideas people come up with, because I think we've all got a piece of the jigsaw puzzle. Like, I've got lots of things on health and education, and sort of the work week. I think we work far too much. I think we should be doing other things. And what is that perfect world, because I think if we can get a big enough vision that inspires people, they're more likely to get off their backside and say, okay, let's do this. Let's make this happen. Let's set this up. We'll run the councils ourselves. We'll take over the country, because this vision, this is what we could create for the future. So yeah, people can get that along with the audiobook, and also there's the Kindle download, and they can do a pay what you want, free if they like. And I just want that information out there. And there's also the paperback so that people can share it, give it to friends and families, because the idea is to help people, because I take people on my wake up journey from being like, oh, la, 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 life is fun, to, oh, hang on a minute. So I take people step by step. Here's what I discovered. So it's a pink pill book. It's deep cerise in places. I don't go plumb the depths of the worst. I let people research that for themselves. And there's a resources page so that if they're trying to wake up friends and family, there's some key videos like Richard Jeff's Stakeholder Capitalism, so that they really understand that this isn't politicians being dumb or greedy. There's a bigger play happening here, and this is what you need to be aware of. So that's the purpose of the book, to help speed up that waking up process, but also for the people that are already well aware of what's going on. It's fun to read someone else's journey and also compare notes, and you don't want to plumb the depths, but also have some ideas for the future. So that's the book in a nutshell.
Wonderful. Is there one place to find all things Rachel Mathews, to find links to everything yet, or where do we go for that?
RachelMathews.uk. And that's Rachel spelled Rachel and Mathews with 1 T .uk.
Okay, I will definitely put that link in the show notes. Thank you very much. You are a fascinating person, and keep it up. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tom.
Bye.